People, we are Tottenham TV back here for another Tottenham update, starting off with the sporting director situation. Florian Plettenberg is telling us that Sebastian Kehl is now the leading candidate as Spurs' new sporting director. Spurs want him to rebuild the team alongside Johan Lange. Yes, you heard that right, alongside Johan Lange.
Shiver down my spine.
And sources close to Kehl indicate that he has not yet decided whether he wants to turn to football immediately or take a break. Just no, Tottenham. No, don't do this to yourselves. First and foremost, before you think about getting a sporting director through the door, get Johan Lange out the club. Just get him out. There is no need for him to be here anymore.
He shouldn't be doing anything alongside anyone. Either he should be relegated to solely academy or young prospects, or he should be out the club. That's the only two options for me. Like, he should not be involved anywhere near the first team and rebuilding this squad. He has shown himself completely incompetent. I don't understand, right? He seems to be the only sporting director who needs someone with him. like they don't trust him to do the job himself. Like, every other club have a sporting director in charge. They have one guy who has the final say on everything. Yet, because we don't trust our sporting director, we're only willing to employ him if he's alongside someone else. The whole thing is ridiculous.
I know.
Like, why employ someone like that? Just get rid of him. Like, it's laughable at this point. In terms of Sebastian Kehl, look, I don't know too much about him. I've just been looking at his track record of when he was at Dortmund. He seemed to like... I was looking at his earlier deals when he was like... Apparently he's been sporting director between 2022 and he got sacked, by the way, earlier this year. I was looking at some of his deals earlier on. He had some really good ones. They had Amy Schlotterbeck, like Gittins. They promoted, like Nemetcho starts from now. So they've had some good ones, but it seems as though in the last couple of years they've kind of lost their way a bit. They didn't have a good summer this summer in terms of the transfers they made, and I know a lot of Dortmund fans are laughing at Tottenham right now, saying they're really on the relegation train, getting someone like Sebastian Kehl, and they think it's an awful appointment. That's from a Dortmund fan's perspective. Obviously, I don't know exactly how he works, and from his job at Dortmund, they haven't been amazing, but they did get to a Champions League final not so long ago, and they were one game away from winning their league when he was there as well. So there was some positivity, but I think they've kind of have lost their way maybe in the past couple of years.
Yeah, made a couple of good signings recently. Sergio Garassi, Jan Couto. I think he was one of his earlier ones as well, was Nicolas Sula, who's obviously a good player. But look, the reality is, like, we can talk about all the good stuff he's done. Who are the bad signings he's brought in? Like, I'm not too sure. It's like, I don't know too much about the Dortmund transfer since he's been there. But it is quite telling if the Dortmund fans are like laughing Tottenham and saying, he'll be a terrible candidate for you. I mean, Aston Villa fans tried to tell us the same about Johan Lange, but we didn't want to listen.
Arsenal fans said the same about Vinay.
Arsenal fans said the same about Vinay, and we didn't want to listen. So if history tells us, it is probably good to listen to the fans of the clubs that he was at before.
There's a reason he just got sacked, isn't he? He couldn't have been doing too well if Dortmund decided to get rid of him. So doesn't exactly spell like we're getting the best in class here in terms of sporting director. I can't really comment saying he's really terrible. It seems at the time he was doing a decent job, but it seems as though that Dortmund fans really hold him accountable for their malaise over the past couple of years.
I think like the three names that have been mentioned about, I think is Winstanley, Sebastian Kehl and Dougie Freedman. Like, out of those three, the only real one I'd want there is Dougie Freedman. Like, Winstanley has not pulled up any trees at Chelsea. I think the transfer business that has been going, I mean, it's just been a complete mess there at Chelsea, and he's the one leading it. Sebastian Kehl, obviously the Dortmund fans didn't like him too much, and look, Dougie Freedman is the standout candidate for them. If we can get him out through the door, Spurs need a serious rebuild. We need to get smart transfers in. If we stay in the Premier League, we would probably have finished 17th 2 years running. So it's obvious we're not going to be able to attract like the top players. So we're going to need to find some interesting and smart signings. And I think Dougie Freedman has proven that he could do that at a good status in the Premier League.
The problem for him is the money. Apparently he's on a serious amount of money over in Saudi, and it's also tax free. And if we were to match his what he's getting paid, I think he'd be like the top paid sporting director in the whole of England, and like by a good margin apparently. So whether we're willing to do that, obviously Tottenham apparently finances are tighter than they think. So whether they're willing to give Dougie Freedman that kind of money is a complicated issue, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. But they did break the bank for Roberto De Zerbi, gave him a 5-year deal. And I think this next sporting director is just as important. You know, we need to get this sporting director role right. You know, we've got it wrong too many times over the last couple of years. Well, definitely since Johan Lange has come in. So if they get this right and he can work in tandem with Roberto De Zerbi, I would say it's money well spent.
Yeah, you would say so, wouldn't you? But do the club, you know how the club tend to operate? Although, are they going a different direction again? It's still quite new, albeit it's still ENIC. So you've got to hold them accountable for what's happened in the past. But without Levy there, will they operate in a different way? Who knows? But I agree. I think out of those three, Dougie Freedman seems probably the best fit.
Yeah. But Florian Plettenberg, obviously a very reliable journalist, saying Sebastian Kehl is the leading candidate to work alongside Johan Lange, and that does not fill me with a lot of confidence for the future. If it was just Sebastian Kehl saying he would completely replace Johan Lange, I'll be a bit more positive about it. But because it's working alongside, just having him around is just...
I'm assuming any sporting director then is probably going to be alongside.
That's what it sounds
Lange.
like, doesn't it? Maybe that's why Dougie Freedman as well probably didn't want to take the job, because he wants full reign. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
The whole thing is ridiculous. This whole club is a mess. Lange should have been gone a long time ago. I think they tried to relegate him, and then Paratici left, and now he's back with much more say than he should have. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, look at Fabio now, you know.
Yeah,
went into Fiorentina, had a great January transfer window, and now they're completely safe from relegation.
Which is incredible. They when he was there, as you say, they were in the relegation zone, and I think they were bottom, and they were playing awfully, and they were losing so many games. They had a mad January, something like 8 or 9 players, something ridiculous.
I think it was about 6 players they signed.
Like a lot of players in Jan, and as you say, they're now well clear. Fabio's done a phenomenal job there, and it just goes to show the quality that is there with Fabio.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to some potential players. Andy Robertson, who we all know has been linked quite heavily since January. Fabrizio Romano says that Robertson is set to join Tottenham if they stay in the Premier League. According to his information, there was already in case at the agreement on everything between Robertson and Tottenham. So everything is agreed for Robertson to join Tottenham if Spurs stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, which is obviously an odd one, because that implies that agreement stands from January, which is obviously before De Zerbi came to the club, and it seems though we're pushing ahead with it despite a change of manager. Does De Zerbi want him? Is it De Zerbi's man, or is it a club signing? Is it a signing we just feel like as a free transfer, with his leadership ability, with his ability to influence a dressing room, is it too good an opportunity for us to turn down? But will De Zerbi want him around as a fullback, or would he want someone else? Obviously, as we've mentioned, De Zerbi has brought in older players before. He's used the likes of Lallana, James Milner in his dressing rooms, albeit different kind of positions. So it's not necessarily like something he would be against. But for me, I think I was saying the fact that we're not in Europe probably helps someone like Robertson. I think when he's had kind of rest in between games, he hasn't been as bad, and obviously he has been a very good left back, but he's clearly on the decline. I would rather go for someone younger to compete with the doggy, to take the burden off him, but I do understand the need for someone of his kind of off the pitch kind of leadership ability, and maybe potentially with Romero and Van de Ven potentially leaving, he could even come in as captain potentially.
Yeah, look, he brings a wealth of experience, doesn't he? He'll be coming as the most experienced player in the squad. Definitely good for the dressing room, leadership ability, a lot of things that we're lacking in those aspects. But as a purely a player point of view, I don't think this is a good move for Spurs. You've already seen decline in him this season. You're going to see more decline in him next season. But look, I guess you're looking at if Spurs stay in the league, what's our actual ambitions next season? Is our ambitions just to get mid-table,
probably,
or finish in the top half, stabilise the club? Then it might not be a bad signing. But if our ambitions are actually, it might be deluded to say, but go get Champions League football, finish in the European spots, 6th in the league, then he's probably not of the required quality.
I think playing one game a week and you've got a doggy there, I don't think it's that bad. I think even if the dog gets injured, you're not putting too much pressure on Robertson, I think, in that point of view. Obviously, he's on the decline.
The thing is, with the doggy's track record of injuries, like he's probably our backup left back is going to play a significant part. So
yeah, but our point being, if we're not in Europe, he's not playing midweek and on the weekend. So he's not playing. Like, I think that's where Robertson has really struggled to play 2 games in a week. But if he's only playing once a week, I think he could probably cope with it, like, by and large. Obviously, I'm sure he won't be as good as he was even 1 game a week. But I think when he's really struggled, I feel, for Liverpool is when he's been overplayed, potentially.
Yeah, that's fine. But he's going to be 33 next season. So I think he's going to keep declining. That's the problem. So the Robertson you see this season might not be the Robertson you see next season. You know, it might be an even worse player. So even with the 1 game a week, you're still going to see a player that is continually on the decline. So I think we need to sign someone that can fight for the place for a doggy in its own right. Not to say that once a doggy's fit, it's always going to be a doggy that's playing. We need to have someone on a similar, if not better level than a doggy. And I don't think Robertson is that. And he won't be that, for an extended amount of time as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So that is Robertson. Let's talk about Micky van der Ven. Publication called 442. I don't know, since when did they have exclusives and transfer news? But they say that Micky van der Ven is preparing to leave Tottenham, regardless of how Tottenham season ends. Whether it's survival or relegation, it is expected that more of the same will occur with a lot of the playing staff. In terms of Micky van der Ven, it's all well and good saying that he's preparing to leave Tottenham, but it's going to take for a club to come in and pay what Tottenham want. That's going to be the sticking point and will always be the sticking point and has always been the sticking point for players that do want to leave Tottenham Hotspur. And I suspect that Tottenham are going to be, especially if we stay up, charging a pretty penny for Micky van der Ven.
Yeah, him and Romero, I think they're both going to command good fees, although they're saying Romero potentially has release clauses or gentleman's agreements. I don't know. I don't think the same as with Micky van der Ven.
Gentleman agreement with someone that's not there.
Yeah. I think, obviously, for me, judging by Micky's actions and some things he's done, it does definitely imply that he does want to be here beyond this season. And obviously how we've been, he sees himself as a player probably who should be playing Champions League football, should be fighting at the top end of the table. And I don't obviously necessarily disagree. I do think he's let himself down over the last few months, with some of his performance level heavily dropping. And I also think there is stuff he does need to improve on, like to become the very elite defender that we all hope he can be. I think he's like a top quality defender, but in terms of like being a defender that in a team that like wins you the league, I still think he's got a bit to learn just to get to that level just yet. I wonder what kind of fee we charge and who comes in for him. Like, do we sell to the Premier League? I mean, if we stay up, I find it very unlikely we're going to sell to the Premier League. And then who outside the Premier League can afford him? That's another question. So whether he gets does he get frustrated in the summer with a failed move potentially and get forced to stay if we stay up, or will we make some concessions and compromises with our fee to sell him to like a Barca or a Madrid or something like that?
Yeah, I think he would be amazing in that Barca system. I think he's perfect for that role that Barcelona would want him to play in, but whether they can afford him or not is a different question. But yeah, it's interesting because in terms of the money that we're going to be commanding, you can't really see many teams outside the Premier League probably being able to afford him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously I can definitely see how Liverpool or City like being interested in him. I guess you think if Liverpool come in for like 80 million, do we sell?
Probably. I would say if he's hell bent on leaving, I think they probably do sell him.
What about a 60 million plus Curtis Jones? We'll get into that.
60 million plus Curtis, yeah. There could be. I mean, if Fabio was here, I would say yeah, that's a deal that could be done. But I'm not sure if the current guys have it in them to do those creative kind of deals.
I think at the end of the day, it just seems as though he's not happy here.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, goes a long way. I mean, maybe the Zerbi can change that for him. And in terms of, I think for the majority of the season with Frank and Tudor, he's been like, what the hell's going on here? Like, I want to get out of this circus. But maybe if De Zerbi can show something these last few games, even if he gets a failed move, at least like De Zerbi can get the best out of him and like say and play the football that he's excited to play, rather than if someone else was here, he'd be like, look, this is just a nonsense. I don't want to be here.
I think the way I see it playing out is, if this is assuming we stay in the Premier League, which is obviously not a guarantee, the way I see this playing out is that he ends up staying one more year, and then that takes him into 2 years left in his contract, and then he has a decision to make. Are we going in the right direction under De Zerbi? Can he see a future here? Are Spurs, on an upward trajectory? If the answer is still no in his eyes, then I think we make a deal with 2 years left in his contract. If not, then, I mean, if he does see a future here, then obviously we'll get him to sign a contract. But I suspect that probably we'll get one more year out of him.
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I get. And I think he might be more willing to accept that with De Zerbi rather than someone else. I think if we have Tudor till the end of the season, I think he'll probably be hell-bent on getting out. But the fact that De Zerbi's here now, and at least we're like, there's maybe... Well, look, we'll see at the end of the season if this statement rings true, but maybe there are some signs for next season that we could be a lot better, hopefully, this season. We'll have to wait and see.
Maybe. All right, let's talk about Curtis Jones then, because Alex Crook is saying that Jones is strongly considering now leaving Liverpool this summer, and Tottenham would remain keen on him if they avoid relegation. Obviously, Spurs were heavily linked with him in the January transfer window. We spoke at length about Curtis Jones and the qualities that he does have, not getting too much of a look in at Liverpool. And I think for Curtis Jones' sake, he needs to go somewhere where he's appreciated a bit more. Obviously, a Liverpool boy coming through the academy, so he's got that affinity to the club. But he's not getting any younger now, and he's at a point of his career where he needs to start playing regular football. So, yeah, it'd be a decent signing for Spurs, but would he get the regular football at Tottenham that he so much craves?
Absolutely, I think right now he definitely starts for us. I think he's such a De Zerbi player. I think De Zerbi would love him, in my opinion. His technical ability, his passing ability is probably much better than anything we have. So I think he comes in and starts immediately in the central midfield. And I think probably all our play goes through him, if I'm being honest. That's kind of how I see it now. I'm not
Where
saying...
do you see his best position? An 8?
Yeah, he probably is another 8, to be honest, which is not a great
But he's a different kind of 8 than what we have.
He's more of a controller, more of a, like a Billy Gilmore kind of a player. So, someone who keeps the ball ticking over, kind of sets the pace of a game, quickens the pace, slows it down, whatever the game requires. Very good at breaking the lines with his passing, which, and again, we don't really have in our midfield. I definitely think there are question marks. I think off the ball, defensively, he's not the best. He's not awful, but he's not the best. And there's a reason why he's never really nailed down all these years the first choice midfield in Liverpool, because I've always think they've had better midfielders, and that is the truth. So you're going to have to take that. And obviously he's a player who you bring in now, but probably in 2 or 3 years he's moved on and upgraded on. But I think for now, from what we need in terms of just getting a baseline of De Zerbi ball, I think we need players like Curtis Jones, to be honest. So I'm massively in favour of bringing him in if he's willing to come. Obviously, the report also says Villa interested. I could see him fitting in well there as well. So whether we can get him, I think it would be a good signing for us.
Well, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Would you like to see Curtis Jones at Tottenham in the summer, assuming Spurs do stay up? The last bit of transfer news, another Pape Matar Sarr rumour. And Football London have said that Pape Matar Sarr's agent is understood to be in talks with Fenerbahce. Turkish publication Photomac has reported negotiations are already underway to lure the midfielder to Fenerbahce and the Turkish league. So it's gone from the Turkish league to Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, now back to the Turkish league.
Again, these Turkish sources, I don't pay too much attention to them. They've been always so wrong. I can't remember the last time they've called anything right. So I think if he does leave, I don't think he goes to Fenerbahce. I mean, unless he sold some sort of project where he's like the main man and he's like going to be their best paid player and he's willing to go there. I think he's better than that. I think he can go to somewhere in Europe's top 5 leagues and be a good player there. Or we keep him. I don't think he goes to Fenerbahce. Would they pay the money we want as well? What are we going to want? 40 million? I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But the Turkish league, I guess, is been able to attract some top talent. Like Victor Osimhen, look at him. He's like one of the best, if not, one of the best strikers in Europe right now, and he's playing for Galatasaray.
That was a very unique situation, though, wasn't it?
It feels that way, I guess.
It was, because he was forcing a move out of Napoli. He's demanding like incredible wages, like 300-400 grand a week. No one was willing to push the button on it, and he'd fallen so far out with Conte because of his actions that he said, "You're not playing again for me." And he also wasn't agreeing a move anyway. I remember Chelsea tried to agree it, and they just wouldn't agree a fee. So it was either, and I think the window closed. So if it was either go Galatasaray for the big money because they're willing to pay it, or don't play. So he went there, and now he's happy there, to be fair, because banging the goals, they're playing in Europe. But I think it's a very unique situation.
I always thought that was just going to be like a 6-month loan, and then he'll end up at one of Europe's biggest clubs. But he ended up signing there and loving life there.
It's a weird one, isn't it? You got one of Europe, like, considering there's a real dearth at the moment, it seems, of like top strikers in Europe. You've got one of the best just sitting there in the Turkish league, waiting to be snapped up, and like, no one's pushing the button, and he's banging them goals in for fun. You know how good what a good player he is, and yet just like maybe one day he'll go back to the Europe's top 5. I hope we haven't seen the last of him in the top league, because he's so good. But at the moment, he seems happy in Turkey. It's crazy.
Yeah. And last but not least, we have got some quotes from Roberto De Zerbi on Xavi Simons, and says Roberto De Zerbi feels he understands Xavi inside out, having played in the same position. And the quote is, "He's lucky to work with me, not because I'm good, because I was number 10. What he thinks now, I thought 20 years ago. So we have a special connection. I have a special connection with all number 10s I work with. I love a number 10. A number 10 has to understand that he has to score goals and also make assists, not just to play, be nice to people, goals and assists." So De Zerbi's... Yeah, and you saw a lot of influence in Xavi's performance in the game on the weekend.
Definitely, I think it's definitely going to help Xavi having someone like De Zerbi, who wants his teams to get on the ball, wants them to have options all the time, wants always looking at how the teammates can create angles to receive the ball. All these different little things that I think Xavi's really going to benefit from, and I think it's important he says that goals and assists, because I think sometimes, there are players in those positions who do certain jobs but don't take responsibility of getting the goals and assists, which they should. And I think it's good for him to acknowledge, look, you're a forward player, you play in those offensive positions, you've got to be getting those numbers up. And I think Xavi's more than capable of that. I think at Brighton, the attacking players always benefited from how De Zerbi coached, and were definitely, whether it be in Ciso, Bonanote, Lallana, they all kind of did really well, I felt, under De Zerbi. So I think Xavi, hopefully, if we stay up and he stays here, I think De Zerbi's going to be a great coach for him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know your thoughts regarding all the news stories in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.